K2. 2178, expenditure over $15,000 to Ctl Engineering, Inc. 2179, resolution of support Spring Grove Arboretum designation FOC. And 2180, preliminary legislation ODOT State Route 18 improvement project. We have 2160 budget amendments. We have 20025 correct negative balances from the Parks Department. Is Laura, you handling all these today, or is
Yeah, that first one is, sorry, just to adjust between some accounts in the Parks Department.
okay?
And then, do you want me to continue?
No, we'll go one by one. Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 20028, Bicentennial Fund, coloring book sales.
That was money received from donations or the coloring book and bicentennial book sales that we're just appropriating now to the fund.
Okay, questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 20027, insurance reimbursement, Bennett Lumber property fire.
Those are checks we received due to the fire being appropriated.
All right.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 20029, Supreme Court grant funds.
The court received a grant from the Supreme Court, and that is appropriating that into their fund.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 20030, appropriate funds from CARES Act 481.
This is the first distribution from the CARES Act that we are appropriating to our fund.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
And that's 539,000. So that's
Correct.
500 and what?
539,401. That's how much money we got.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 20031, Supreme Court grant funds again.
Right, this is the second grant they received.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 2176, donation of old computers to Medina City Schools. Whose is this one? Where'd he go? Oh, there he is. Darren.
Hi. Yeah, we're donating 21 computers. They're 4 years and older. Of the 21, 17 are complete chassis. 4 of them are missing some hard drives. One of them's a parts chassis. They're old. They're no use to us. They have Windows 7 on them. It's nothing we would ever do. The school use them. They peel them apart. They use the parts for their labs and whatnot. They reload their operating system on it. It's kind of a partnership that we've been doing.
Okay. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carries. 2177, revision to Civil Service Rule Romanet 8K2. Who's handling this one?
I will.
Mayor?
Lorene couldn't make it tonight. I actually asked the Civil Service Commission to approve this and then bring it on to council. What we found is currently, if an internal candidate is promoted for either of the fire chief or police chief, there's a 1-year probation. But if an external candidate, which is the only 2 times we can do it for fire chief or police chief, is brought in as an original appointment, it was only a 6-month, sorry, I'm steaming up, 6-month probation. And that just didn't make sense to me because the internal candidates, we know the people have worked with them for years, have observed them. To bring somebody in from the outside and have half of the probationary period just didn't make sense. Didn't make sense to the Civil Service Commission. So I'd respectfully ask that we increase that to 1 year as we're in the testing now for the fire chief. Mr. Huber and I discussed it as well.
Okay, any questions?
No.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
2178, expenditure of $15,000 to Ctl Engineering. Patrick?
Thank you. This has to do with the parking deck. When the project started, we hired 2 different firms to do our testing. One was for concrete testing, one was for soils and foundation inspection. I just estimated based on our last parking deck what those costs would be. Turns out I overestimated the concrete testing amount, so we have some money left in that PO. I underestimated the soils and foundation testing, so we need some more money there to pay them off. Suggesting we transfer the balance of what's on the concrete testing to CTL And then I think it's another $1,800 or $2,100, $2,800 to be able to pay them.
Okay, questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 2179, resolution of support to Spring Grove Arboretum designation, FOC. Mr. Worley?
Thank you, Mr. President. Earlier this year, at the Cemetery Commission meeting, one of our commission members suggested that the Friends of the Cemetery consider designating or applying to be an arboretum due to the wide variety of species diversity and money and effort put into the trees, gardens, and preservation of the cemetery. The Commission Chairman, Teresa Merkel, took this request to the Friends of the Cemetery, and they approached the city about developing plans to apply to ArbNet to have Spring Grove designated as an arboretum. Part of that application requires that you have a tree inventory, a management plan, dollars committed to maintaining those trees, and a mechanism for education for the public. So earlier this year, the Friends of the Cemetery discussed with myself how to proceed. So they reached out to Bartlett Tree Expert Company and contracted with them to do a management plan as well as a tree inventory. They completed that a few months ago and have inventoried 613 trees, 68 different species, and 13 shrub groupings. This data is going to be input into a program called ArborScope, where it can be used as a tool to help guide projects and work that is to be done at Spring Grove. The Friends of the Cemetery, as I previously mentioned, they paid $14,000 for this plan and have committed to approximately $80,000 to be spent over the next 2 years on tree preservation maintenance to address many of the items identified in this plan. By doing so, they've worked with Bartlett Tree Experts and myself and our cemetery sexton to identify 27 trees to be labeled and marked in the cemetery. That will accomplish the educational piece, and as time goes on, we'll further develop that to make Spring Grove more of a destination for not only those who visit the cemetery, but those who are interested in learning about the trees and the gardens there. I think it's a really big asset to set our cemetery apart from others, as well as shows a great commitment from the Friends. So they're going to apply for a level 1 or level 2 accreditation through ArbNet. And at our last cemetery commission meeting, we discussed council adopting a resolution supporting this application to show our commitment to their nonprofit, as well as our interest in achieving the same. So that's where we're at. And I appreciate the Friends working with us collaboratively on this project, as well as funding and committing to future funding for the maintenance of the trees and gardens.
Questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Simpson?
thanks. And I want to thank Jared and James, the sexton, for all their hard work working with Bartlett Trees. And again, thank the Friends of the Cemetery for their wanting to further develop the cemetery to be more recognized. We do have a historical preservation with the arch entering the cemetery, historical recognition. I was amazed when the gentleman, what was the gentleman's name from Bartlett, Jansen?
His name's Chad Klink.
Chad, yeah. I mean, between Chad and Jansen, I learned more about trees then I shouldn't say that I wanted to know, but it was, I mean, they were estimating this gentleman from Bartlett was estimating some of the cost of some of the trees, estimated costs of the trees, and they're already in the cemetery, and I was just amazed. And again, the commitment from the Friends of the Cemetery, along with Medina being a Tree City USA, I think this is very appropriate, and I hope that my colleagues will vote in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jensen, first of all, I can't say enough complimentary things about what a spectacular you and your team do to keep that cemetery looking as great as it does. But one question I do have, and this is me thinking forward too far again maybe, but if with us getting an accreditation, will we give up anything as far as being able to do what we want to do, where we need to do it, and managing the cemetery as we see fit?
No, we shouldn't be giving up anything. It's my understanding that if you don't continue to meet the requirements of the certain levels, that you would just be downgraded, and it's not going to impact anything if the funding mechanism goes away. If you start to think maybe the Friends can't fund tree care indefinitely, as long as we're still working and operating under the management plan, having educational opportunities at Spring Grove, I think we can continue to hold the accreditation, but I'll have to double check, but I don't think there's, to my knowledge, it's once you have it established, people are gonna come to the cemetery specifically because of this. There's only a few arboretums in Northeast Ohio, so this commitment and educational opportunity here in Medina, I think, is really valuable.
Okay, but the accreditation won't stop you as director of the cemetery to do what you see fit to do to maintain the proper operation of the cemetery.
Yeah, no, it's not going to affect our operations at the cemetery at all.
Okay, great, thank you.
And the only other comment I'd like to make, since being on the cemetery committee, my wife and I had an opportunity to visit the Holden Arboretum, which is up, I believe, it's in Geauga County. Is that correct, Jansen?
Yeah, it's in Kirtland. Yep.
Kirkland. If you ever want to, I mean, it's not just trees, but it'd be a wonderful outing for you and your family to. It is just spectacular. So, thank you.
Jansen, one quick question regarding the designation. Once we get the designation, I assume you're getting this designation to get additional funds from the federal government or something? Because why would you want the designation unless you can get something? And I assume there's grants available for arboretums, right? And if you get those grants, then if we're no longer, do we have to pay those grants back?
I'll have to double check that, but I don't believe there's any specific grant funding or anything for arboretums. It's more of a achievement, if you will, because you're committing to the proper care, the proper maintenance, and educating the public. I guess to answer your question, I have to look into that further, but it's more of an accomplishment.
Okay, I just didn't want to be, I know that Friends of the Cemetery said they're going to fund it. I just didn't want to get us in a situation where we support something and then 5 years later we're like, well, why'd we support that? Because now we got to pay some money back or something. I don't want to get in a situation where we're obligated to refund money or do certain things that are beyond our budgetary constraints, and just to make sure. I mean, it's a great idea. I just didn't want something to come back at us.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. I guess to better answer your question, in the past several years, we have been working with the Friends of the Cemetery as a department to guide them on what trees need to be pruned, what they need to do, basically as a reactive measure. Now that we have an inventory, a management plan, specific locations of trees that are GPS coordinated, this gives us a tool, because all of the trees were looked at once. It gives us a tool to help better utilize dollars and put money into the trees that are worth pruning. So this inventory that they paid for wasn't specifically for Arboretum accreditation. It's just a tool to help us get that accreditation. So even if the Arboretum designation doesn't happen, this is very important to work with the Friends and have an idea of where the money can be spent on the tree pruning, the tree planting programs moving forward.
Okay. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And finally, 2180, a preliminary legislation to ODOT State Route 18 Improvement Project. Patton?
Thank you. This is something we've done in the past, specifically for the North Court Street project. It's basically legislation where the city agrees to support the Route 18 project currently being planned by ODOT. Our requirements or commitments within the agreement are $250,000 to go towards right-of-way. As council knows, we've already authorized and paid for that. The only other financial commitment is they're estimated about $140,000 total for water line costs for any city water line outside the city limits. For some reason, water line within the city is paid for by the project. We do have water line that extends outside the city that is not covered, so we would be financially responsible for that work at 100% our cost. We are going to have to ask for the emergency clause. They sent this to me last Tuesday with the requirement that we return it by October 8th. So if we pass it at our next council meeting, that'll be less than 30 days before it's due.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rose?
in about the third paragraph down in section 1, Patrick, it says access roads will be built for access management purposes. Where exactly are those going to be? And
There are two of them, if I remember right, and they're both they're both well outside the city. Kind of in the area of Aldi on the one side, and the other side is just a little west of there, I believe. I've got the plans if you'd like to see them, but they're both in the township, and they're basically to minimize the number of driveway accesses. So they'll build these parallel access roads, each would service 3 or 4 properties.
thank you.
And I do need to ask for subject to law director's review. I don't think Greg saw it yet.
Okay.
All right, I will make a motion including the emergency clause subject to final approval of the law director.
I'll second that, including the emergency clause.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, that includes, well, that's pretty quick, 17 minutes for a Finance Committee meeting. But we have an executive session, which is going to probably take some time, so.
Okay, I will make a motion to go into executive session at 6:17 PM for the purpose of conference with legal counsel for the city concerning disputes involving the city that are subject to pending or imminent court action, to include the mayor, the law director.
Okay, and we'll meet downstairs, I guess.
I'll second that.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Lamb,
Yes.
Shields,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Rose,
Yes.
Heffinger,
Yes.
Coin.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0.
We'll be recessing an executive session to discuss imminent litigation, coming out of executive session, taking no action of the items discussed in executive session, reconvening into finance and then adjourning finance and waiting for counsel. We are in recess.